Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Orthodoxy Q&A. We've got some interesting questions tonight. I'm sure. I don't have the questions yet, but I'm sure there are questions. But I do not have an opening for the show. Do you have something to say?
Well, yes, I do. Actually, I don't have something to say.
Oh, I'm seeing you wearing your Joe Bonamassa.
Yeah,
shirt.
It's my Joe Bonamassa. Yes.
All right.
Great concert.
Great concert. Yes.
All right. So you recently did the Sleepy Hollow video. You talked about scary stories. Are they okay to watch and so forth? And someone that watched the video had commented and said, except for the Headless Horseman, not considering that one, but other scary stories, ghost stories, things from different cultures, couldn't they possibly glorify God?
Well, I had said that we don't have any. Now, the one ghost story, if you want to call it that we have is the one that I mentioned about Saul, but that does not glorify God because he was using he was using pagan processes, if I could call them that, and certainly that did not glorify God. So off cuff, I can't think of, and even when we were making it, I couldn't think of anything that scripturally based glorifies God. We don't talk about ghosts or anything like that. Everything is always spoken of in terms of a vision that is seen of a saint or something like that is allowed by God.
But these are just stories outside of Orthodoxy even. These are just the many, I mean, there's got to be thousands of folklore tales from all around the world that are scary. And could any of those stories, I mean, how would one of those stories, I guess, glorify God?
Does Casper the Friendly Ghost glorify God?
Well, I guess we have to then define what are we talking about when we say glorify God. I guess that's what we've got to define first. Okay, and so glorifying God certainly means that what we do and what we say is not an offense to Him, does not offend the personhoods of the Trinity, or does not deny what it is that they do. And that it is something that would be within the will of God. So, I mean, from Genesis, we have, man, image and likeness, okay? But man was not created to be a spirit, so that's not the image and likeness of God. So that's why I can't think of anything offhand that would, that in a sense of a ghost story, forget about the scary part, even if it's not scary, like Demo said, Casper the Friendly Ghost, okay, but those things are not of God. They don't represent who God is and what His plan was for His creation.
Well, then maybe anybody out there, if you have heard a story that you think would be considered glorifying God, maybe they could share with us.
Right.
Well, what if a ghost story has something, has a positive message to teach? Like, not to stick with Casper, but a lot of those stories had positive messages, etc. So, is that considered okay, or is just a very concept that a good message may be found in a ghost story, something that might be anathema to Christians, be a bad thing?
No. Okay. So in that sense, we're just reduced to a moral lesson. Okay. So you can have a good moral lesson, but not glorify God. All right. So in that sense, it has a nice message. So Casper the ghost has a nice message at the end of it, and so we take that to heart. It happens that those things align with the teachings of Jesus. Okay, but they were not meant to. Those stories were not necessarily meant with the purpose of glorifying Christ or glorifying God. It just happens that moral lesson aligns with something that Jesus taught.
All right. Okay.
All right. We do have a research question from last week. Oddly enough, by the same gentleman who actually has the first submitted question in today, Don, who said, why did Apostle Paul say that men ought not to cover their head in First Corinthians when high priests do? And why do Jewish men cover their head with a kippah, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, if men ought not to?
So in chapter 11 of First Corinthians, where that is coming from, in its entirety, it starts in chapter 11 and says, now imitate me just as I imitate, right? Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the traditions just as I have delivered them to you. Okay, so he's first off talking about traditions that he has received from Christ as his apostle, and now he's passing on. Those include obviously both oral and written traditions. All right, but then it says here in verse 4, every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. So in verse 4, he makes a specific claim, a specific instance, which is in the act of praying or prophesying. And so when you look at the homilies on First Corinthians by St. John Chrysostom, that's kind of one of his focuses there, is that this is restricted to praying or prophesying. All right. Now, there were certainly rules and regulations in the Torah about for the Jewish priest to not shave or trim their beards or their hair. Okay, so in this way, so it does in fact follow the rules, all right, of the Jewish priests of the time. Now later on in 7, he says, "For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God." Now here we have both we have both St. John Chrysostom's commentary, but additionally we also have then Matthew Henry, who again Protestant, but aligns the same point here. And the point that they bring up is that when you are in the presence of authority, okay, and think about the military, all right. So when I approach as a subordinate officer, when I approach the desk, when I approach the desk of a senior officer, and you've seen this in movies too, what is the first thing I do?
Salute.
Well, the first thing I do is remove my headgear. So I remove my headgear,
Okay.
and then I salute. All right. And so it is a custom and a tradition that in the presence, anybody in the presence of authority will remove their head covering. And so here, if you look in verse 3, but I want you to know that the head, the authority of every man is Christ. And so the commentary that they make there is that verse 4 speaks specifically about being in the temple and praying or prophesying, and that's the tradition of the Jews. But in 7, this is a general commentary that men should not have their head covered because they are the image of Christ, and therefore they do a dishonor to him when they leave their head covered. And St. Paul considers hair on the head to be a covering, because in Genesis and in fact in the and it's repeated in the priest's service book that man was given hair to cover his head. All right. And so that's how we distinguish or discern between verses 4 and verses 7. Is everybody confused now?
Yes, I'm like, what?
Oh, okay, look, very simply, verse 4 says that should have his head every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonors his head. Oh, sorry, dishonors his head. So in this sense, that he is the image of Christ. And then also in verse 7, he is the image of Christ. Christ is the authority. So you remove your head covering in the presence of authority. That's the tradition.
All right.
See, I find it funny that you say that about the salute, removing your head covering so you can do the salute, right? Because, and this might be legend, but from my understanding, didn't the salute originate in the Middle Ages when knights used to lift up their visor, so they were literally wearing a helmet?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Which is headwear,
which is headwear. Yeah, there you go.
Right. We have our first super chat of the day, of the evening, or day, depending where you're watching from Cyan with $5. Thank you. Do you baptize adults with immersion or by pouring at our parish here?
Oh, so here I do it because we do not have we do not have the the baptistry where you can do a full immersion. Okay, then I just do it by pouring water over. If we go into the didache does not talk necessarily about full immersion. It talks about the use of running water. And if you can't find running water, then still water, shouldn't be hot water, but it doesn't necessarily talk about this idea of full immersion. All right. So there are priests that insist upon a full immersion. And not only that, there are priests that insist on that the candidate should be naked except for having like a covering or something on top of them. And again, my point here is to bring them into the Christian faith. So in today's time, I am a little more discreet than that. I'm not so formal with that. So I have not been told by the seminary or my bishop that I am in violation by pouring water over their head. I do anoint I do have the sponsor anoint the different parts of the body, the hands, the head, the chest, the feet. So we do that. But no, in this parish, for adults, I do not do a full immersion.
Real quick, because we have a little bit of confusion because he talked about the military. We have Santa Man 1 he's in, and he says, no, in the military, we do not remove our head for officers. We salute by touching the brim of the hat.
Yeah, outdoors.
Yeah,
outdoors. But when you're indoors, you remove your covering in front of, you have the covering. You walk in the office, you have your cover removed, and then you render a salute. Okay, and then he says at ease, and off you go.
But outdoors, you
do not remove your cap.
Oh yes, that wasn't specified.
So. Oh yes, that's true. Yeah,
okay,
that was indoors.
All right. Anything else, or you ready to do?
Nope. Good.
All right. So our first question from Don. Can modern day Greeks understand Koine Greek? And is the liturgy in the Greek Orthodox Church in Koine Greek?
So the answer to the questions are no and yes. So no, they cannot understand it unless they have specifically gone, as we did in seminary, to learn Koine Greek. All right. It is not the Greek that is spoken today. There are some words that they will understand. They'll understand ke and Isus, theos. They'll understand certain words, but they won't understand enough of the structure to be able to put it together. The reason they know it is because they've heard it so many times. It's like the Lord's Prayer, right? You hear it so many times, okay, you know it, all right? I've asked, in fact, I have a standing bet of $100 to any Greek that can adequately translate the Lord's Prayer from Greek into English. And I have not yet lost the $100.
Ooh, challenge.
Because the only thing they do is they recite what they know. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. That's all they know. But to actually parse out each word and know exactly what it says, they can't do that. And the second part is, yes, what is written and what I read in church is Koine Greek.
All right. From David Woolworth. David says, without explaining my nightmare, I am repentant of my sin in the nightmare. Pray for me. My loved one and I have not been living together as a legally married couple for 10 years. She entered a coma last Friday, and I got the harshest reality check from the hospital staff. Things are improving. She woke up and gave permission as soon as she was able. We have children too. Doesn't matter. Don't be unmarried.
Okay, well, there we go. So can't say anything but hallelujah, Jesus, as the bishop likes to say.
Well, there is and I don't know if we're missing part of David Woolworth's messages here, because it seems like it continues, but that does bring up an interesting question. If we sin in our dreams or nightmares, is that something that we should seek forgiveness for?
No. Sin has to be an actual committal.
Right. We can't control our dreams. At least most everybody can.
Most everybody. I've heard that you can, if you're really good, you can somewhat
lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming. Okay. Yeah.
I've done that quite a few times in my life.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's good. Orthodox does not punish thought crime.
Does not right. Right now we are not. What's
like
what's
Minority
the movie?
Report.
Minority Report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Sabina asks, do all Eastern Orthodox Christians use the RSV translation? I've seen people saying to use the King James Version or the Greek Orthodox Study Bible.
No, is she talking? If you're talking about what we read in church, the gospel that is on the altar and the gospel that is on most altar tables is RSV. Okay. Now, if you go to the Antiochian church, more than likely you'll see it in King James. Okay. From now, if you're talking about just having something like this, that's on your nightstand or in your bed when you're reading at night or wherever it is, then I would say something that is understandable to you. The Orthodox Study Bible is at the top of the list, and my second would be the NIV, because I think the NIV captures the essence of what is said in the Greek. It's not necessarily a direct translation, but sometimes that can be awkward and difficult. All right, but NIV does a fairly good job of translating the essence of what is written.
All right. Cooking with Bebug.
I'm trying to keep my answers at 30 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
because there's been some complaints lately that by let's call him D Euclid. All right. But Demos has been complaining a little bit, about my long answers.
Some questions require longer answers.
Yeah, so I might have mentioned a few times to you as well.
Oh, well.
So anyway, Cooking with Bebug wants to know, what does the phrase "let the reader understand" in Matthew 24:15 and "let him who has ears hear" in Revelation 2:7 signify regarding the call to discernment and responsiveness to God's message? So the first one is Matthew 24:15. Let the reader understand.
24:15.
And that's in regards the call to discernment and responsiveness to God's message.
All I can say while you're looking it up is I'm learning a lot about military hats in tonight's chat.
Okay.
It seems to be a lot of back and forth about different branches and so forth. It's quite interesting.
So you have your director's hat on today.
It's like I foresaw the conversations about covering your head.
Oh,
So
okay.
for one of the very rare times in my life, I'm wearing a hat. I'm not much of a hat person. If we lived in an age where the fedora was a regular acceptable part of dress, I'd probably wear one. But right now it's more of like a hippie statement to wear one, which is why I refuse unless I'm dressed like Indiana Jones for Halloween. But then you need a bullwhip. That's
That's right.
That's the only way.
And okay, when we look at because the reason I'm hesitating a bit is because he talks about the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet, and this then has some ties with Revelation, and in parentheses we have whoever reads, let him understand. The words whoever reads, let him understand are commonly understood to be inserted by Matthew into Christ's address as an encouragement to his early Christian flock who may have witnessed this event. So this is very, very common for the disciples to do. In fact, John does that quite a bit, where he inserts his own commentary to what Christ has said. So this means to say that these are not the words of Jesus Christ, but these are the words of Matthew. Of Matthew, trying to give some background, but also as the Orthodox Study Bible says, to give words of encouragement, that if they, in these times when they see that this abomination of desolation, that they believe that this is coming, that they may understand and refer back to Christ's words.
All right, and then Revelation 2:7.
And I think that's just, I'm thinking it's making a reference to that, Revelation 2:7, right?
2:7. Let him who has ears hear.
Now we've heard Jesus say this many times about he who has ears, let him hear. So this is nothing that is revelatory in Revelation. So Christ has said this many times. 2:7, right?
In fact, he even said it in relation to understanding the parables, if my memory serves.
Yes, and in fact, he even goes further than says, I speak in parables, so how does he put it? That they may not understand. Those who cannot hear cannot understand. Those who cannot see cannot. But you said 2:7.
2:7. Is he just saying, pay attention to what I'm about to say? Let him who has ears hear.
Yeah. So, and yes, I would say that based on Jesus's previous use of these words, he is saying that if this is something you can understand and you recognize the person who is saying it to you, Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah, the Revealer, then you are hearing correctly. But to those who cannot hear because their heart is hardened, the Pharisees, the Pharaohs, so on and so forth, those are the ones now who cannot understand. So yes, he's making a statement about you need to understand and have faith in the person that is speaking to you, so that you can believe the words that he says.
All right.
Isn't it a warning against ignorance in a way?
Well, yeah, you could say, you could say that too. Right.
All right. Our next question is from Marcelo. What led to the East-West Schism of 1066, and how did the Eastern Orthodox Church and Roman Catholics live in one unison prior to it? Were both churches at one point only one under one name?
Well, 1066 was the Battle of Hastings, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so 1054 maybe.
Well, that's maybe they're a history buff and they got their years mixed up.
So, okay, so first off, we have to understand that the two churches were always at odds with one another. I mean, just look at family dynamics. I mean, every time, because we watch Dateline, American Greed, and Forensic Files. And every time they show, everybody thought they were the perfect family, right? There's always something in the background there, okay? So
the nicest guy you've ever met.
The nicest guy you would have ever met. He loves his wife. He never would have done her any harm, and then there she is in the wood chipper, right? Okay. So, well, that was an episode, right? Remember that episode? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was issues, and there were contentions, and there were problems throughout the history. Throughout the history of the Orthodox Church, throughout the history of the Church, period. Okay. Yes, you are correct that before the schism, all right, there was identified a church, but even within that, there were 5 patriarchates. Okay, and so Alexandria was, had issues with Constantinople. Constantinople had issues with Jerusalem, and then they had then issues with Rome. So there was so I don't want you to think of it like we were all one big happy family, and then a couple of things happened, and then we got divorced. No, we were having our issues. The difference is that before the schism, we had the opportunity through the councils to reconcile our differences. That's why the emperors would call the councils, because they were the great divides. Okay, who is Jesus Christ? Who is the person of Jesus Christ? What should we call the Virgin Mary? There was arguments back and forth. All right, and so the councils helped to alleviate that and to keep the churches together. All right. With the schism now, you have also that coinciding with the invasion of the Ottomans, which tended to separate out the churches and promote a lack of communication. They didn't want the churches talking to one another, right? Divide and conquer is kind of the war strategy, right? Is divide and conquer. And so because we were not able to talk to one another, we were not able to resolve our differences, and now the church is now split apart. Add to that at the time, the Patriarch of Rome now decides that he is the head of the universal church, which obviously the other four patriarchates disagreed with. There was not a way to work that out. And so now that becomes a key issue for wanting to separate the two churches. Yeah, we had the Filioque, and we had some other issues, and the issue about the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. But again, the chief point was that the Patriarch of Rome takes on the title of Pope and declares himself to be head of the universal church without the authority and the permission of the other four patriarchs.
Okay. All right. Our next question is from Anesti Hatzisavas. They say, hello, Father, Presbytera, and Demos. As Orthodox Christians, if one is going through a separation or divorce, are they allowed to receive Holy Communion? I know in the Catholic Church it is forbidden until they get an annulment. Is it the same in our Orthodox faith?
There we go. So, unfortunately, well, okay, so let's talk about akrivia first, which is the strict interpretation of the law. If you are divorced and you have not reconciled with the church, meaning that you have not been granted, you have not gone through spiritual court, and again, remember, the Orthodox Church does not issue divorce. They issue permission to remarry. Okay, so we have to be very clear on that first. So we don't have a concept of divorce, all right? So if you have not gone through the spiritual court process and given permission to remarry, then technically you cannot receive communion, all right? Now, we have a plethora of people who are divorced and have not gone through spiritual court, and yes, I have communed them, all right? So the issue with that becomes you can't be hypocritical. There are a number of things that will bar you from receiving Holy Communion. Not being in church to hear the Holy Gospel, okay? Not having a lifestyle that is conducive to the Orthodox faith. Living together without being married, being divorced. There is quite a number of things that would excommunicate you from receiving communion.
Missing church 3 Sundays in a row.
Missing church 3 Sundays in a row. Okay, so if the priest were to put into effect all of those reasons, we would have maybe 1 or 2 yayas that would come forward and receive communion, and that's the only people that would receive communion. But in the true belief, as St. Ignatius said, that communion is the medicine of immortality, it is not for those who are worthy. None of us are worthy to receive Holy Communion. It is for those who are sick, and all of us... What?
You're going to loosen that.
Oh, okay. Oh, all of us are sick. All right. So we all need the medicine of immortality. All right. But the priest, like myself, we can work with those people and get them to pursue the proper course of action, which is to take their divorce through the spiritual court.
You've brought up spiritual court a few times in the show, but I think a lot of people don't really realize what that looks like. Are you brought in front of a council of elders? Do you have to defend yourself? Do you get a spiritual lawyer? How does that look? What does spiritual court look like?
Sounds like a great video.
Okay, so spiritual court is nothing to be alarmed about. There's a song like that. Nothing to nothing to get upset about. Strawberry fields forever. Isn't that a song like that? Okay, so it's nothing to get upset over. All right.
That is water, I promise.
No, it is water. Okay. And court is just a moniker. It's just a name that we use. It is not an actual court. You do not need a spiritual court lawyer to defend yourself. In fact, we're not bringing you up to defend yourself. What we are trying to uncover is, what was the reason behind the divorce? And what have you taken away from that? And what are the things that you would do different? Normally speaking, unfortunately, when you appear before spiritual court, we have to have your divorce papers. So the time for counseling is already passed. All right. So it's not a question of, we're going to try to reconcile the marriage and get you back together again. That ship, as they say, has already sailed. Okay. It is the priest's job before that to try to put together some type of marriage counseling, whether that's by him or by somebody else. So what will happen is that when the divorce is granted, okay, the church asks that you put yourself in a state that you are hopefully ready to be married again. All right. Now, you don't have to be. You don't have to get married again. The church doesn't say that you have to be in a state of marriage, of course. All right. But what we want to know is, what are the situations that cause that? Are you aware of what it is that either you've done or your spouse have done, or that both of you have done together? So it's more of a discovery than it is a court.
Yeah, but is spiritual court limited just to divorces?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, there's nothing.
It's not like you go there for marriage counseling or anything like that.
But does spiritual court cover something outside of divorces, like an excommunication for something else, or
no? The only way that we're using spiritual court now is, at least at the lay level, we are using it for situations of divorce and bringing a person back into good standing. Now, can a spiritual court be used for a situation where a priest has become excommunicated or has done something heretical or is on charges? Then, yeah, that could be another use for a spiritual court. But in terms of use for the lay people, it's strictly confined to divorce.
Well, now you've dashed all my hopes at creating a new reality show, Spiritual Court.
Spiritual court. And normally speaking, there will be either 3 or 4 senior priests. So this is not something for a 1 or 2 year or 5 year priest. These are all senior priests. So they're very well experienced. They have learned to be compassionate. So some people have this idea that you go to spiritual court and all of a sudden, it's four priests and we're standing there like what was the one, You Can't Handle the Truth, Jack Nicholson. And Tom Cruise and
all the good, a few good men.
It's not like a few good men where we're hovering over you and asking you all these tough questions. Okay, it is a very, very compassionate process meant to discover and uncover what it is that has led to the situation that you're in, so that you don't necessarily repeat that again.
Some feedback to the earlier question about the schism. Sentiment 1 says the squabbling among the churches goes all the way back before the apostles separated to found the churches. They squabbled over who would sit next to Christ.
Yeah, that's true.
And Patty adds, not as much squabbling when they figured out what take up your cross. means.
And remember, the squabbling was with the apostles, right? That was the James, the brother of our Lord, presided over the first ecumenical council in Jerusalem, which is in Acts.
Right. Do they have to be circumcised? Wasn't that where they were arguing?
Right. Circumcision versus not and eating meat, or
and wasn't Paul and John at odds with each other too?
I thought Paul and Peter, because Peter wanted them to follow
Paul and Peter,
the law.
that's who I meant.
Right.
That's who I meant. Yes, Paul and Peter. Yes, not John. Yep. All right. Our next well, it's not really a question, but Yanni in Brazil says, "Good evening, greetings, blessings from Brazil. I sent you my question via email. Did you receive that?"
Right. Give me a second here, and we'll see if we can
And he asked to
quickly
please,
call that up.
He asked to please keep praying for him.
Okay, so he sent me a picture of an icon. He says, "Bless Father, my question is, who is the child held in the Savior's arms in the icon of the Dormition of the Most Holy Theotokos?" All right. Okay. And do you know the answer to that question? Unfortunately, you can't.
Yeah,
you
I
can't
wish
put
I could show the picture.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. Unfortunately, show the picture.
It looks like Christ.
No, it's her. It's the Virgin Mary.
Oh,
So this is.
it looked like he had a beard. That's why I thought it was a male.
Yeah. That is the Virgin Mary.
Okay.
So just like in the icon of Christmas, where you see Jesus as a man, and then you see him also then in heaven. So this is her in death, but then Jesus holding her in his bosom as the resurrected Mary, or Mary in heaven.
Oh, okay. All right. Wow. Aaron says, "Hi, everyone," and asks, if a priest is going through a tough time and performs the liturgy half-heartedly or with little zeal in his heart, does it in any way invalidate the service, especially when it comes to the consecration?
So the early church wrestled over that, about what is the moreover about if the priest does something that like, let's say he doesn't fast properly, doesn't prepare himself properly, does that negate what happens during the divine liturgy? And actually, and I'm not sure where the canon is, but no, the answer is it does not in any way invalidate the sacrament of divine liturgy, nor does it invalidate the consecration, because this is not. The divine liturgy and consecration do not depend upon the man, they depend upon the action of God. Okay, so every man is imperfect. All right, so the church, the Orthodox Church, asks that you do the best that you can to prepare, but understands that all of us are human, and all of us undergo periods of depression or sadness, or we're mad. Okay, and the church decided that does not in any way invalidate the sacrament.
All right, very good. WS asks, is it pointless to talk reason to non-Christians about Christianity, since it's not about reason? So if reason can be used, then God can be explained by logic, or does that mean we just can't convince anyone?
So actually, a while back, we had a very similar question, and the answer to that was in, I believe, the Psalms. So I have faith, therefore I understand. It is not I understand, therefore I have faith. So the beginning of knowledge is faith. So you can't reason your way to God. So that, and I'm thinking of which of the heresies. Well, that's actually the heresy of philosophy. Okay, and that's why. Many times the church was at issue with the use of philosophy, and this is why the early Protestant reformers wanted to cleanse the Christian faith of the heresy in their mind, of the contamination, the corruption of philosophy in both the Orthodox and Catholic Church, because they felt that it tries to reason out God rather than start from a point of faith. So faith I have faith, thus I understand, and not I understand, thus I have faith.
Okay.
So, but getting back to the big one, the big question at the beginning, is it pointless to talk reason to non-Christians on Christianity?
In some sense, yes, it is pointless because, as I said, you can't reason your way into God because there is going to be that gap that requires faith to cross over. And so that's the point. That's what they have to come to. And that's an experience. And that's what separates out Christianity, is that it is not a cerebral exercise. It is experience. Every single candidate, catechumen that comes to me, they don't come because they've all of a sudden reasoned it out. They come to me because they say something is missing and I need to recover that and I can't explain it. And so I need an experience.
So if one is talking to a non-Christian and reason is not a way to do it, what is, obviously you can't enforce an experience on someone, what is a way to talk to a non-Christian about Christianity?
So, and that's a great question. And the Orthodox answer to that is silent witness, is they have to see that regardless of what life throws at you, you are always joyful. Not always happy, but you are joyful. So for us, the silent witness is the most powerful tool. People see how you are and they want that because they can't get it through secular means. And they know it's something else. Nobody can be that joyous in times of suffering, in times of happiness, and just nobody can do that by themselves. And they want to know why.
We have a good morning from Armenia, and I believe that's the Indonesian flag. So,
oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, and I'm glad that y'all are listening.
And Antum makes a statement, but I'm curious about your reaction. Orthodox people should have nothing to do with ghosts.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something we believe in. I mean, Jesus Christ spent so much time talking about the body, talking about the importance of the body. And Jesus Christ comes back in a body and says to Thomas, touch me, handle me. So for us all of a sudden now to get all bent out of shape about ghosts, we are denying the reality that Christ has given to us. In the video that we're making up, when Christ died, what does it say? It says the saints and the prophets came out of the graves and walked among the people. It doesn't say spirits went, ooh, I'm the prophet. Who am I? I'm the prophet Simon. I've come. No, it's none of that. They walked around. They were, and again, I don't know how they were dressed. I mean,
As they went in the tomb, I would imagine.
Yeah, right. Oh, okay. As they went in the
I
tomb.
think they went shopping.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but they didn't come like a Michael Jackson
Tuxedos.
Thriller or something like that, right?
Yes.
But I would like to clarify, currently working on, not making up.
Oh, okay. All right. Currently working on. Yes. Okay. Good. See? Command of the English language. I like that. All right.
And I might add, perhaps Orthodox should stay away from tarot cards, fortune tellers, and those who speak to the dead. They have all these huge auditoriums where they come and, people, are told Aunt so-and-so is sending you a message and all of that.
Cold reading. And that's all fake. I'd add horoscopes to that list.
Right. Yep. I'm not sure if that next one is an actual question. I hate to skip anybody's question if it is, but I'm not seeing what the question is. Are you? I think it's a question. Oh, all right. So from Chasa, Orthodoxy has the least birth rate, then Catholicism, then Protestants, Muslims, etc. So for a Christian to have better odds to have kids, be evangelical, you accept them too as non-heretics?
Well, I guess I would argue that point. I mean, I'm just using, personal experience here at this parish. I've I've performed 45 weddings, and within 2 years they have their first child, and I have couples that I've married who are now on their fourth or third child, and we have a number of parishioners here that have at least 3, and some of them have 4 children. So I am not seeing that in this parish, you know. So so I'm a little at odds about, you know, Orthodoxy having low birth rates. All right. Marriage, yes, the Orthodox statistics from the Archdiocese are coming out that certainly the sacrament of marriage has gone down. All right. But I have quite a number of young couples in this parish and in my previous parish who are not married and have 2 or 3 children. So, and now that's a different problem, right? But they're having kids. So I have to argue that point. I don't see where that's necessarily true from the experience that I have.
It's because they haven't seen our upcoming marriage video
yes,
series.
And once they see that, they will want to get married.
Everything will change.
All right. But did I answer, like, was there a second part of that question that I didn't answer? Or?
Yeah, I think you got it. All right. Thelonious asks, is it okay to cut off other members of your family?
Sometimes that you have to do that. It doesn't mean, I mean, I've experienced that in my own family, you know. I mean, we're talking about like, you know, extended family, not immediate family. I mean, I'm good with my immediate family.
But I assume we're also talking about over religion?
No, over anything. Yeah. Over anything. I mean, if their lifestyle is such that it is incongruous. Okay, well, there's using big words tonight. Incongruous with what a Christian life is, then you do have to separate yourself from them. Now, it doesn't mean that you stop loving them, but what it does mean is that you have to say, I cannot be around this type of atmosphere, but that doesn't mean that I don't love you. If they become a crack dealer, if they become a prostitute, if they become a bank robber, these are situations that are incongruous with a Christian life, and you can't be associated with that. You can't harbor them as criminals. You can't defend their lifestyle. Okay, though they have chosen a path, you know, that God's given them free will. But I have my free will to say that you have separated yourself from me and the consequences are you've separated yourself from me. And I'll always be there for you if you choose to return. But right now we have to part ways.
What are your thoughts? Because I've been seeing this a lot popping up online, especially over the last few years, about family members cutting off other family members and almost showing off about it over politics, etc., etc. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay, so the situations that I mentioned are extreme situations. You know, it is unchristian-like to remove or separate yourself from a family member because you don't like their politics. That's ridiculous. Okay, I mean, you know, you're not coming in my house because you're a Republican or you're a Democrat. That's just insane. That's insanity. Okay, that's not a Christian idea. So when we're talking about separating, we're talking about like the things that I mentioned. I mean, these are clearly moral and ethical dilemmas, but you know, party affiliations, the fact that you have a Mercedes and I'm only driving a VW or I'm driving a Skoda, or, you know, not picking on Skodas, but, you know, those are what Christ asks us to do there is to reconcile with our brother. Okay. So in that case, you know, we have to, and I hate to use the term here, but, you know, we have to man up and we have to come together as the church did, you know, and we go through our own little private council and we mend our ways. So no, we shouldn't be separating over these minor, non-critical things.
I think we're just falling prey to what a lot of forces out there want: the destruction of the nuclear family.
Destruction of the nuclear family.
It's a good thing to cut yourself off from somebody you disagree with.
Yes, and that is absolutely anti-Christian.
All right. From PF Stats, why do so many Orthodox praise Charlemagne's actions when he force converted or death that didn't and helped divide the East and West, while others say he is a heretic in his actions, as some theologians say?
I guess I got to study up. As Sean Connery would say, I need to remember my Charlemagne.
Actually, he said, "I just remembered."
I just remembered that. That is true. I just remembered my Charlemagne.
Quite the opposite.
Okay.
So we'll add that to your list of research questions for next week.
I don't recall why Charlemagne was hated by Orthodox. Got to look that up.
Oh, I don't know. All I remember is we were trying to find the church in, I think it was Bad Aachen, where Charlemagne is buried, and we went to go find him. This is very embarrassing, but it's kind of funny. And we went to the gift shop, and all we found were postcards about Karl the Great. And we're like, we're not looking for Karl the Great. Where's Charlemagne?
Right. And then finally somebody told us, well, that's French for it was Karl the Große.
Oh, that was so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Oh well, we're setting Americans back even further. Let's see. Where is our next question? It's quite the going on about the hats and
wow.
And
okay.
yes. Let's see. Jim, here we go. Jim says, I'm a modern Greek speaker and I can understand pretty much of it, but I have been trained in ancient Greek in high school. So yes, I can totally understand it.
And I'm not saying it's impossible, but for a Greek speaker, a Greek modern speaker who has no training whatsoever in the ancient Greek language and the Koine Greek, it is very, very difficult to understand. There's a lot of words in there and sentence structure that we don't use in modern Greek. A lot of that has been eliminated. The
average parishioner is not going to understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
The Retri Report has an interesting statement about Charlemagne that I'll throw in. He says, or they say, Charlemagne supported the Philoque and the use of icons as a teaching tool, but not the veneration of icons. Not everyone knows what they are talking about. Charlemagne is not deserving of praise.
I mean, he, but he didn't. You're saying he supported the use of icons. He just didn't support the veneration of icons. Okay, so
all right. From some guy, that's the name, some guy. And I don't know what EP is. If the EP and the
Ecumenical Patriarch, I think.
Oh yeah, I think so. Ecumenical Patriarch and the Pope established sacramental communion in 2025 and was once talked about, what would the correct response be for the Greek Orthodox? Go along with it or depose the Patriarch?
Well, so
there is
so both. What was St. Paul's advice? Is to have respect for the authority over you. So no, it would not be appropriate for us now to say, well, he's a heretic now because he's having communication with the Catholic Church. Jesus Christ wanted one church. We pray for that, we pray for that every Sunday through the creed. Now, if the Patriarch gives up Orthodox principles for that alignment or that coming together, okay, that's something we have to stand against. Okay, so it depends upon what that dialogue includes. All right, but just to say that the Patriarch and the Pope, or let's call him the Patriarch of Rome, are working together to consolidate the churches. They are doing the work of Christ. What is not the work of Christ is acquiescing and losing the foundation and the traditions that we have of the Orthodox Church.
Aaron says, Father, I think you covered this, but as a reminder, can the evil one and the demons know our thoughts or just see our actions and based off of those actions try to lure us to sin?
So there's some competing theory about that, that they certainly can observe your actions, but that they cannot read your thoughts. But through your actions, they can understand who you are. Okay, just as any a person can, and they can then put thoughts, or they can offer thoughts that would lead you to sin. All right. So they can't read your thoughts, but what they can do is they can influence your thinking. Like somebody just whispering in your ear and saying, yeah, you know what, that's okay. Just go ahead and do that. It's not that bad. Everybody does it. Those types of things. So they can influence you in that way, but not by reading your thoughts and controlling your mind.
So they are a transmitter rather than receiver. They have no way of receiving, but they can still...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yeah. Right.
All right. Jack says, hello. If an Orthodox Christian marries someone who is not Christian at all, is it considered that they live in sin?
Well, okay. So, So I don't think that we would. They are married. Okay. So they are living within the bond that God established for us in the Garden of Eden. However, there are certainly issues that make it difficult to be a member of the Christian community. All right. So what I'm saying is they're married, so they're not living in sin, but they are in a situation that puts them outside of the community.
But would it be an Orthodox wedding?
No, of course not. No.
So, I mean, does just a straight up legal marriage, does that count?
I mean, the Orthodox Church doesn't recognize a Protestant wedding. Does that mean they're living in sin? No. It just means that is not congruent with an Orthodox lifestyle, but it doesn't indicate sin.
Right. We don't recognize them as being married within the church.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Ron has a question. Can I get buried on top of my mother and father?
Well, that's the way we're going to be buried, right?
On top of our mother and father?
I mean, on top of one another.
Well, yeah, that's how the
military funerals are done, right?
Well, that's how the military cemeteries, the national cemeteries, whoever goes first is on the bottom, and whoever goes second is placed on top. But it's, can I get buried on top of my mother and father, not spouse?
I would see why not.
Guess it depends on is it the rules of the cemetery you get buried in? Is that
now they are talking about separate caskets, right?
I'm assuming yes. I'm assuming they mean within the same.
Yeah, I don't know of any rule that says that the only, and this has nothing to do with religion. The only rule would be, how far underground you have to be buried, right? So if the only person is 6 feet and then you're on top, that only makes you, let's say, like 2 feet above. That might be a violation of code, but it has nothing to do with religion.
What aren't the vaults? I mean, they would be in the same vault, wouldn't they? In the ground? They wouldn't.
Yeah, they'd be in the same vault, but I mean, the person is 6 feet. There's 6 feet of earth on top. If that's the code, then you place another casket on top of that. That casket may only be like 2 or 3 feet below the ground.
Unless when you buy the plot, you have to specify you're going to do it, and then they dig accordingly.
Then they dig accordingly.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, in the end, aren't we, trillions of people throughout history buried on top of each other? In a way. We're all buried on top of other people.
Well, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah. I mean, look, he's being philosophical now. All right.
Is it, I think it's Japan. Don't they have they started building these, like, really tall, I don't know what you call it, like a skyscraper, but it's where the people are buried, but it's very tall. It's like, I don't know how many stories high, and they are buried to save room. They're burying up.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
I have to
wow.
look that up. I saw a video on it one time, and so
It's interesting. Every culture, every country. I mean, heck, even here in the United States, every state has like their idiosyncrasies when it comes to burial or how to deal with the deceased in general. I mean, I until we did the video, I didn't even realize that the ossuaries were used quite frequently in Greece.
Oh, right, right.
yeah.
I was I was looking up because one of the patriarchs was very influenced by Calvin, and so he wanted the Orthodox Church. He wanted to instill in the Orthodox faith the Calvinistic idea of predestination. And I just forgot the patriarch's name. That was Patriarch Cyril Lucaris. And so he wanted to incorporate that as an Orthodox doctrine. And so he was declared a heretic for that, and he was then removed. Okay, so we do have in our own church, in our own Orthodox church, situations where we were influenced by heresies, and we looked to bring those into our faith. But the Orthodox Church, as an overarching church, always has the checks and balances to make sure that our faith remain in its pure, truthful sense.
And we have a military fact check. Santa Man One says, "Yeah, in a stack grave in a national cemetery, the service members' info is on the front of the headstone, and the dependents' info is on the back."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have. They have seen those.
Many times.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So there might have been confusion above your head, but underground, we're fine.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Nick asks, why was the snake in the Garden of Eden to begin with?
Well, if we look at the the Judaic idea, remember, there's not the idea of Satan in Judaism. In the Book of Job, he's given as the advocate. Okay, so we do believe that the principalities were created first. So here we have Satan as the quote unquote devil's advocate, who is acting in the same way that he was acting in the Book of Job.
All right.
Is it confirmed though that the snake was Satan?
Well, again, they we don't have that. The Judaic religion does not have a Satan, the evil one. They do have the idea that evil is an essence, but not in the personhood of, let's say, a Satan. So he is just regarded as, in fact, I don't even think Satan is Satan Latin. I think Satan is Latin. I don't think it's a Judaic word. We'll have to look
And
that up
then
here.
I seem to remember when you were at seminary, Father Pentu talking about the serpent was a symbol of wisdom, which is why Eve may have been actually listening to the snake.
Ah, okay. I did
can't
forget
remember.
about that.
It's been so many years,
Yeah.
but he did talk about that. It was kind of interesting, and that's why when they held the staff up, it had the snakes on it.
Yeah, and right. That's right. We have the serpent heads on the patriarchal staff. Right.
Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. Where am I at? And then a second question from Nick. Why can't God simply snap his fingers and remove the devil from our existence?
I'm sure that he can do that, but that is not part of his divine plan.
Well, I mean, if we view God's existence as something out of time,
Mm-hmm.
then technically hasn't that happened already? The final battle. You said I was philosophical tonight. I'm
Yes.
now really hitting you over the head with the philosophical point of view.
Well, all I can speak of is from our standpoint, that is a future event that is to happen. Okay. God existing out of time, you're right, does see the end. And that's why we say that there is no battle between good and evil, because evil has already been defeated. So I guess in that philosophical sense, yes, the war has already been won. Yeah. Thank you, Socrates. I'm going to rename you now.
I'm living up to Demosthenes as well.
So Mix asks, what is the craziest time you have been asked to fulfill a priestly duty, like anointing for someone near death or another emergency service, or something you have been called away from doing to provide said service?
What's the craziest one?
Yeah.
Well, that's easy. I mean, I was asked to do a blessing of one of my parishioners' strip joints.
Yeah, that's true. You were. You didn't do it though.
No, I did not. But I did tell him. I said, I'll tell you what. I says, if I do it, my prayer would be that all the women find much better and more morally proficient jobs. And he said, "Thank you very much, Father, but I'm not going to take you up on that."
Yeah.
So that is the craziest thing I've had.
Yes. I'm trying to get down to the next question. There's a lot of comments.
Well, while you're looking for that, what is probably the craziest question you've been asked? Like something, I know we have a show called Orthodoxy Questions Answers, but I don't think we've gotten anything very, out of the ordinary here. We've had a lot of provocative questions. But what is like the one question that you've gotten that just gobsmacked you? Like, I can't believe that this is being addressed. I'm curious.
I mean, well, remember we did the house blessing. We went upstairs and she wanted us to bless all of her Buddha statues. Thought that was kind of crazy.
Well, she had not just all her Buddha statues. I think she had a cross and a Buddha, and it was like Benny from The Mummy.
Yeah,
covering all the bases.
Yes,
right,
yes.
Right. And so, and I had a difficult time, doing a house blessing there, just because you can't be all over the place. I mean, I had that. I'm trying to think of, but a question that was asked to me. No.
This is the challenge to everybody that's watching. This is let's find the most out there question we can ask Father Angelo. We have 20 minutes. Go for it.
Oh, that sounds like a call to a challenge. All right. I believe the next question is from Abject Fool. I apologize if I skipped anybody's questions. There was a lot of comments and things, and I was trying to pick out what was the question. So Abject Fool said, this question may be a little much. Oh, so maybe this is going to count for that, what you just said. What form of the Godhead is correct? Monarchical, Trinitarianism, social Trinitarianism, modalism, Unitarianism, or others?
A lot of isms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the answer is Trinitarian. Remember, modalism is the wearing of many masks. He has 3 different modes, but there's no real distinct personhood. So we can't have that. Okay. Universalism was already condemned as a heresy. All right. So we don't have that. What was the first one?
It was monarchical.
Okay.
If I'm saying that right.
Okay. And so that would be more Judaic in nature, or more Islam, that there is only one God, Abba. All right. But that's not what we have. Is we have one God who has 3 personhoods, expressed in 3 personhoods. So we can't have that either. So Trinitarian is really, out of that, is the only one that we have.
All right.
And if I may, Santa Man 1 brings up something. Santa Man, you've been awesome tonight. In Japan,
is it hat related?
Well, they say in Japan, cremation is mandatory, The cremains are placed in a columbarium, which I need to look up. So now, what if you're Orthodox in Japan and we are expressly forbidden cremation? What do you do?
Yeah, and that question did come up before, and I thought that, and that's why I wasn't able to verify it, but I had heard that we abide by the custom of the custom of the country, but I did not verify that. So so I haven't been. I've got to find a resource that can tell me for sure. What is it that we do? I didn't realize it was mandatory. You cannot bury.
Well, I think it's because it's a limited space.
I just thought maybe it was strongly encouraged, because of space. But, I mean, they're that great movie that we saw about the funeral director in Japan, right?
Oh, Departures.
Departures, right? And I thought
Yes.
I thought they were being buried.
Well, no, if you can even go by movies. I mean, did My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3?
Oh yeah,
It wasn't like a big part of that plot, the fact that they cremated the father.
Oh, we didn't see that one.
Yeah, well, which is, I mean, Greeks generally don't go for that, and it happens in the movie. It's not a it's not a it's not a crisis in the movie. It's not a a conflict. It just is, and that's a little strange.
All right, so Japan has a high cremation rate of 99%, but family plots are often passed down with only the first son allowed to be buried there. Women are usually buried in their husband's family plot. So it doesn't say here that it is mandatory. It says it's
but 99% are being cremated.
Right.
That's so yeah. But in the movie Departures, they still prepare them for it. I'm thinking in the movie they had some kind of a service. Maybe they're
and then
cremated
after
afterwards.
they could be cremated.
Yes.
But
It's a very good movie if anybody's looking for a good Japanese movie. Excellent movie. So Jim asks, were animals in the garden or outside the garden on the earth?
well, I was thinking they were inside the garden because wasn't he naming them?
Yeah, God said to. There's about Bob Dylan song about that too.
Right. God named the animal. Well, no, I mean,
Yes, the great Holy Father Bob Dylan.
That's
Yes,
right.
God, man. Now you have me saying it. Man gave names to all the animals.
Right. So
Yeah.
I would imagine that was pre exclusion, so that the animals were in there with him.
So when God expelled Adam and Eve, he expelled all the animals with him?
Well, you would think so, because there cannot be death in paradise, right? So what happened to all
So
the
there's a
wonderful
very
plants?
irate buffalo out there.
I was gonna say maybe the cats weren't kicked out, but
What
I
about
don't
the
know.
dinosaurs? Where'd they go?
Don't start this road.
And then someone asked in response to the question of why can't God snap his fingers and remove Satan? And Nick says, isn't Satan a fallen angel? Angels are immortal.
Well, and we were meant to be immortal too.
Right.
Right.
He says like the human soul. I didn't add that, but
Okay.
he said that too. All right. Fractal, if I'm saying that right. Is it okay to use a prayer rope or do a simple prayer rule if you're not baptized or a catechumen?
Yeah, and people have asked me this question many times here in the parish. New catechumens that are not baptized, some that are not baptized yet. And again, there is nothing wrong with saying a prayer. Orthodoxy does not have the rights to prayer, meaning that you cannot say an Orthodox prayer. Any prayer that is offered to God is acceptable to God. Okay, and if you choose to use an Orthodox instrument like a prayer rope because it helps you build your relationship with God, with Jesus, then off you go. So we don't have exclusive rights to prayer and censers and prayer ropes. Now, it's one thing if you're using them in the right manner. It's another thing if you're just out there trying to be Orthodox, where you buy yourself a censer and you start dressing up and thinking that you're a priest. Well, okay, now we have problems. You're appropriating, right, our faith.
Oh, real quick, I want to go back to Nick D's question because I don't think we fully explored it. He asked, "Isn't Satan a fallen angel? Angels are immortal like the human soul, but that doesn't place the angel above God. God can still smite the angel. He can still cast it into non-existence. I mean,
well, again, we can always go back and say, well, he's God, he can do anything, right? I mean, okay, and then can God make a rock so big you can't lift it? The whole thing, right? Okay, so without going down that road, okay, but we don't have anything in Scripture that tells us that nothingness is something that is within God's will. So that's really what we have to look at is non-existence part of his will, and there's nothing in Scripture that speaks to that. He doesn't say anything in Revelations or anything in the prophets where he talks about, and now they will be banished into non-existence. They always get banished to a place, right? So that's why I don't think that yes, God is God and he can do anything, but he would not do anything that is not within his will.
All right. Miriam says, "Good morning, Father. I just want to hear your side about this dream I had. It keeps bothering me. I have a dream about God, and he told me something, but I doubted him and asked how would I know it was the real God and not Satan pretending.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't answer me. Then I woke up."
Well, there's your answer right there. You already have your answer, okay? Because in each one of the cases that we have, both in Old Testament and New Testament Scripture, anytime that we have a situation where an angel or God speaks, and then there is, and many times there is a discernment there is a, as in the case of the Virgin Mary, there's a bit of anxiety and terror there. Which is the one where he's called 3 times as a young kid?
Samuel, I think.
Was it Samuel? He's called, right, but he doesn't believe, right? In each one of those times, the angel or God identifies themselves. In the book of Tobit, the angel Raphael finally identifies himself. If he doesn't identify himself, then you already have his answer. That is not from God.
Someone, I was just saying, someone had told me once that if you ask Satan, if they're there and you ask, who are you, they have to, or are you God, they have to answer, or they have to acknowledge, say that they're not. I don't know if that's true, but someone told me that once.
Like everything you hear about, if I ask an undercover cop if he's a cop, he has to answer truthfully. But on the flip side, this doesn't necessarily mean that because you woke up from the dream, that dream that it was the evil one, that was Satan. It could just be a dream.
Yeah, it could be a dream. But I'm just saying, if we're going to make if we're going to make a religious or a spiritual explanation, the spiritual explanation is this is not from God. But yes, secularly, it could be just a dream.
Mm-hmm. All right. From Duke Skookum, I want to join the church, but there is no parish or church in my country. What should I do? I'm currently learning, praying, fasting, and struggling against sin.
I'm very curious about the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that too, because
I mean, there are countries that don't have them. I don't think there is an Orthodox church presently
in North Korea.
Well, yeah, but I don't think he's from North Korea. But
you don't know.
You're using a very good VPN.
Yes.
So I mean, China doesn't have any.
Currently does not have any
countries.
Orthodox churches.
So what do you do?
Well, okay, so you would do the same thing that you would do in the United States. You would go to a Christian church, all right? But that doesn't mean that you still can't pursue the Orthodox faith, all right?
Bolivia.
What?
Bolivia.
Oh, is that?
Father is gonna find your Orthodox church in Bolivia. He has the big red book that lists every single Orthodox church in the world.
The big red book.
A big red book.
And
Yes.
Father, as you're looking that up, isn't it true every single Orthodox church has a copy or access to a copy of that red book for such an occasion?
Yes, yes. Now, again, this is only the churches of Constantinople. So, but there is the Archdiocese of South America, and that's why I'm looking that up. But keep going. Okay, I'm gonna keep looking here.
And actually, Sergeant Keroro says there's actually a Rokur church in North Korea.
There is a Rokur church in North Korea.
Yeah.
I do it. Wow. Now there's something.
So there you, but assuming there was none, well,
I'm-
Russia and Korea, they kind of make sense.
Wow.
Well, that's one Tartan priest traveling episode we're probably not gonna do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on. Where's your sense of adventure?
There are no geocaches in North Korea, therefore I'm not.
And you were military, so you might get arrested as
Oh, as a spy,
a spy.
right?
So I think that's off our list right now.
As you're looking at Bolivia, Steve Lenoris is in with early voting advice. Shop in the morning, take your receipt, and vote in the afternoon.
Oh, there we go. Vote. Whoever you vote for, vote.
It's very important.
Buenos Aires.
Take your receipt.
I think there's a joke in here somewhere that I'm missing.
Okay. I'll have to explain it.
The church in North Korea is the Church of the Life-Giving Trinity. In and I'm not gonna be able to pronounce this in Pyongyang.
Oh,
Phnom
Penh.
It's one of those things you always read, but you never say out loud, and then the moment comes that suddenly you have to.
That's the city, like right over the border.
I
the
believe
big city,
so.
city
Yes.
right over the border.
Yes.
The one that you can see from the
DMZ.
From the DMZ,
But from
correct?
what I've understood, they've been North Korea has been actively, as of this week, tearing up a lot of the roads that leads
Rail
to
lines
the DMZ.
and yeah. Yep.
Santa Man 1 says, vote early and often, but not twice in the same election. I'm adding that part.
That's
in,
right.
yes. There's some
Yes.
legalities.
That was
about
the
that.
old saying back in, when was that? When did they say that? Vote early and vote often. I forget when that was. 50s?
How's your search for Bolivia going?
Well, we can
Peru, Chile, Brazil, Argentina. So I'll just have to keep looking. I don't want to hold us up here,
Yes,
but
because we
at
have
least
more
I'm in the right.
questions.
Yes.
So
okay,
let's
go
just
ahead.
say there isn't one. Continue with
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question.
Well, no, I mean, like, I want Father to finish his point. If there isn't one, so let's just say you go to a Christian church. Is there a preferred denomination? Do you have to contact a bishop in a different country to give permission? What do you do?
Yeah. So Bolivia is obviously going to be near other countries that do have a and actually here it is. So what you would do is you would contact the Metropolitan of Buenos Aires, and Buenos Aires is like the Archdiocese, and then underneath that is then the churches of South America. So you would contact that office and say, "Here's my situation. I'm in Bolivia. Can you please tell me what to do?" And he will provide you guidance on either a church that would be close to you, or he will give you guidance on a church, on the types of churches that you can attend there. All right. And he is the exarch of South America. All right. Yep. South America. And that's Metropolitan, looks like Yosef. So so I think I've got his contact information here, but all you've got to do is on Google, just Google the Orthodox Metropolitan of Buenos Aires and email him, and he will give you guidance.
And if you have any issues, we have our contact information email in the description, so feel free to contact us if you have any problems.
all right.
But thank you for reaching out for that, because it is important that you do get connected to and pursue your Orthodox, not faith, but your Orthodox
Journey?
journey. Thank you.
All right. Abject Fool has a correction. Monarchical Trinitarianism is an understanding that the Father is the sole cause, and from him the Son and Spirit come. Think of a father being greater than a son, but both are human.
Yeah, but we say that they are one in essence. So we can't say the
Yeah, but this was comparing different thoughts on it.
Yeah,
right?
but he's revising the definition that I gave him of monarchical, which I appreciate, but at that same time we cannot say that the Father is greater than the Son or the Holy Spirit.
Okay, and then the Sandman would like to know what this is, which is upside down. Maybe that's why you couldn't tell.
Oh, so again, that is that's the insignia for the 10th Mountain Division, and the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum here in New York is one of the few ski battalions that has that cold weather mission. So I was performing a funeral, and I was talking to the family of the father who had died, and they were talking about their son who was in 10th Mountain Division, and I was talking about my military experience, and we traded pins, and so now I just wear this pin to just remember that family, but then at the same time it kind of sparks discussion, that they see it and they say, hey, were you a vet? Were you in the military? Yes, I'm a vet, and we start that conversation too, and it promotes the idea of military brotherhood.
All right. And I looked it up. There is a Coptic church in Bolivia.
There is.
Yeah, some others are actually pointing that out too here.
And there's a Holy Trinity church, but I don't know whether it's under Orthodox world. So I'm assuming that is an Orthodox church, but I don't know. All right.
Oh, and apparently Santa Man 1, I'd love to look this up. He says, once again, he's coming in with more info. I love it. I believe China does have at least one Orthodox church for the Russian embassy.
Oh, well.
Now that I having been to China, I was at the place where I was at the restaurant that was the previous Russian Orthodox church. So I know that there is no Orthodox church on Chinese ground. Now, is there a chapel at the Russian embassy? Probably, but not a church on Chinese soil.
Unless they have built one since you were there last.
Could, yeah. I mean, yeah, could be.
All right.
Because I sought that out, and I ended up going to the Catholic church there. So.
All right, and I think we should finish off with a statement that Aaron F says. It kind of connects to something we were talking about earlier. I was told that when an angel or some sort of being appears to you, that you should demand they identify themselves in the name of Jesus. If they're evil, then the Lord's name will scare them off.
Yeah, right. And so whether you demand it or whether you ask it as the Virgin Mary with anxiety, either way, if they don't identify themselves, then you got a problem.
You ask for the badge.
Right. Yeah. Ask for the badge. And if you've got the if you've got the gumption to do it in a demanding way, I demand that you tell me, then more power to you.
And say the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, and say I have anytime that I have been anxious or nervous about a particular situation, that's always worked. So the Lord's Prayer has always worked.
All right, I was trying to stall a little bit because I think Abject Fool wants to add one last question in. If we don't get the next couple of minutes, please come back next week because they're trying to understand a better idea of the Godhead. So just roughly, if you can give a little bit more guidance towards that.
Not going to like it, but I'll give it to you.
Maybe if I ask for it in a very demanding voice,
There you go.
I'll get it quicker.
Or the YouTube little animated video about.
Yes, we did do. Actually, this is great. As Father's looking that up, we did do 2 videos, virtual Sunday school videos. Now they are designed for all ages, but there's nothing kiddie about them. Where we explored the nature of who or what is God, and its follow up, what is the Holy Trinity. And once again, it is the probably the hardest aspect
Right.
of Christianity to understand from our limited being. So you're never going to get an answer that is going to be wholly satisfying.
So the answer that I gave in that video is in the divine liturgy. And so let's use the words of St. John Chrysostom. And this is at the beginning of the Holy Anaphora, okay? Just after I say, it's the pre-silent prayer, just after I say, let us lift up our hearts to the Lord, we give thanks unto the Lord. And then what do I say? Or what does he say? Okay. You are God beyond description, beyond comprehension, neither seen nor conceived, forever existing, forever the same, unchanging. You and your only begotten Son and your Holy Spirit have brought us into being out of nothingness, and when we had fallen, raised us up again. And that is the best explanation, earthly explanation that I have for the Trinity.
And last, there's a question here about whether or not the Coptics and the Eastern Orthodox are in communion.
So I believe that now we are in a we are in a situation of communion. So it looks like we have resolved the Monophysite issue, and it looks like just like the Filioque was a misinterpretation of terms and a language difficulty problem in translation, we are now in, I don't want to say full communion, but that we are now in communion with the Coptic Church.
Oh, really? And they can receive communion in our church, and
as far as I know that
really?
that they.
Oh, because my brother in California met a Coptic Orthodox priest, and they told my brother, they said, well, Coptic Orthodoxy and Greek Orthodoxy, it's identical. So I told my brother, I'm like, well,
I don't know if it's identical,
not identical, but that's okay.
All right, and that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. We will be back next Thursday. We're inching our way closer to our 200th episode, which is still looking to be the beginning of December.
Have you come up with something?
Oh, I have.
You have ideas?
Too many.
Too many. Okay.
But we definitely will have a special opening, which we're setting up. So we're looking forward to celebrate that. Just as a reminder, we will be back next week, but the following week, we're taking a 1-week hiatus because it's Halloween, and Father and I do not want to drive downtown Rochester Halloween night.
On Halloween night.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
We want to survive to do more episodes. But we're looking forward to seeing you, and tune in this Sunday, because this Sunday is part 2 of Father's teaching liturgy.
Yep. So we're going to be today on Sunday. We're going to be covering post gospel. So I divided into 2 parts: the liturgy of the Word, and then the liturgy of the Eucharist. And so we'll be doing the liturgy of the Eucharist come on Sunday. So if you're available and you can join us, that would be absolutely great. But hey, come up with more questions. I know that you always will. And if we don't see you on Sunday, we'll see you next Thursday.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.